Hey, it's Mike Hambright with Flipner.com. Welcome back for another exciting VIP interview where I interview successful real estate investing experts and entrepreneurs in our industry to help you learn and grow. Today, I'm joined by Mike Simmons. Mike is a Detroit-based real estate investor that started in 2008. That's actually the same year that I got started. He's also the host of the Just Start Real Estate podcast, where he's done well over 300 episodes now. So kudos to that, because I know how big of a challenge that is, my friend. But he focuses on helping people get started the right way in real estate investing. And it's a topic that we have talked about a few times before, but we really can't talk about enough. So whether you're just trying to get started or you're trying to take it to a new level, you're going to want to listen in today. We're going to talk about the importance of just getting out of the gate and getting started, or taking your business to the next level. Before we get started, though, let's take a moment to recognize our featured sponsors. RealtyMogul.com is an online marketplace for real estate investing, connecting borrowers and capital from accredited and institutional investors. Get a rehab loan fast and close in as little as 10 days. Rates start as low as 9%. We'd also like to thank National Real Estate Insurance Group, the nation's leading provider of insurance to the residential real estate investor market. From individual properties to large-scale investors, National Real Estate Insurance Group is ready to serve you. Please note, the views and opinions expressed by the individuals in this program do not necessarily reflect those of FlipNerd.com or any of its partners, advertisers, or affiliates. Please consult professionals before making any investment or tax decisions, as real estate investing can be risky. Hey, Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's good to be here.
I love having on other podcasters, and I think I told you that you might be one of the last that's left that I haven't had on the show until now.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. Yeah, hey, best for last, right?
Yeah. All the other podcasters have cool microphones. They know what they're getting themselves into here.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I know exactly what you're going through, like you said, and hopefully everything sounds all right. That's sort of, sometimes you get it sounds like a tin can on Mars kind of an effect. So hopefully it's not that.
No, everything is perfect. Absolutely. Good. So awesome. Well, I'm excited to talk about, just getting started today, because as we talked about beforehand, and a lot of people get this, there's so many people that, end up kind of failing by never getting started.
Yeah.
And I think I'm sure you feel this way, and a lot of people know how I feel about this, that people wouldn't be listening to this show right now if they didn't have an interest in real estate investing, whether they're already doing it or they see this as a way to achieve financial freedom, get their life back, things like that. And you and I both know that this is a great vehicle, but you and I both also know that a lot of people defeat themselves and never actually get started.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I listen to a lot of different podcasts and different things where people are being interviewed, successful people. And it seems like, and this is, you mentioned my podcast, and the reason I named it Just Start Real Estate is not just real estate, but I listen to a lot of entrepreneurs talk, and inevitably at the end of every time they're interviewed, the interviewer will say something like, hey, what's your advice for people out there if they want to, be successful, or if they want to whatever. And it was almost always the best advice that these ultra successful people would give is just start. Just get started. Yeah. Go out there and take action. And that is by far, like we were talking about before, it's by far the biggest barrier to entry. It's not money. It's not education. It's not where you were born or what city or country you live in. It's the action that you take.
Yeah.
And that's by far the biggest determining factor.
Yeah, you've got to get over that confidence hump. You've got to see it work or not work and learn from it and regroup and do it again. You could, like you said, you can raise money. You can ask people for help with rehabbing. There's resources out there for all that. There's even resources to help you get confidence through a mentor or a coach or being part of a system or something like that. Yeah. But nothing will get you going like real kind of boots on the ground experience, right?
No, exactly. And there's no better teacher than experience. Yeah. And it's kind of a cliche, but it's true. You can have a mentor that can tell you exactly what to do, but until you do it and find out the mistakes that you're going to make along the way and learn from them, that's just the best way to do it. I tell people, I can coach you or mentor you or whatever. After you do your first deal, you'll be so much farther ahead than if I had just talked myself blue in the face for a month. You're going to learn so much just by doing it.
Yep, absolutely. Well, hey, before we kind of dive into talking about the topic of the day, why don't you tell us your background and kind of how you got started, what you did pre-real estate investing, and
Okay.
and we're talking about getting started here. So let's talk about how you got started.
All right, exactly. Yeah, and I'm a good case study in a lot of things not to do when you're starting out. So back in early 2000s, when I was in my early 30s, I started thinking about retirement, right? I mean, I didn't think about it in my 20s, certainly not in my teens, but somewhere in your 30s, most people start thinking about how and when can I retire. And when I started thinking about it, I did the math, and I tried to figure out, what am I going to need to live? How much money would I need to have saved, and so forth and so on, to maintain a certain style of living. And what I realized was that my current salary, or even taking inflation and cost of living increases over the years, I would have to work until I was in my 200s. I was never going to be to retire. I was going to be working for the rest of my life until I died, and that didn't appeal to me. So I started thinking,
presumably it's something you didn't want to do for 200 years.
Absolutely something I didn't want to do for the rest of my life. For 200 years, certainly. I had been doing it for 10, 12 years, and I was tired of it. That's I think most people think about retirement. You can tell how much they like or don't like their job based on when they start thinking about retirement.
Yeah.
If you're planning for retirement, in your early 20s, chances are you're either really smart and you have great parents or people who you look up to, or you just hate your job so much so that you're already thinking,
right.
How can I get out
Get
of this?
me out of this.
Yeah, apparently my early 30s is when I started getting fed up with my work. So I started thinking about how I can retire, and it occurred to me that investing, if I'm going to be working during the day, the only really way to do it is to invest my money somewhere where it's generating money while I'm not working at it. So I was looking up stocks and day trading and just the stock market in general, and trying to educate myself on it. But I really hate reading about stocks, apparently. I didn't know going into it, but as it turns out, I don't enjoy stocks. And reading about it was incredibly boring, and I would always find myself somewhere else on a different website that was more interesting, like ESPN or something, trying to look up anything other than stocks. So I wasn't getting very far. I wasn't getting very educated about it. I actually had friends who understood the stock market to an extent. They tried to help me, and I just glossed over it. I just hated it. So as I was looking up ways to invest my money, I came across real estate investing, and I started reading about real estate investing, and it really piqued my interest. I loved it. I could tirelessly read about it for hours well into the night, and it was very, very interesting to me. And that's exactly what I did. And the worst thing happened to me that can happen to you when you start learning about real estate investing is you sort of get stuck in the learning phase, and you get paralysis analysis. And I was reading success stories, and I was reading about different ways to invest, and every way sounded great and sexy and fun, and I just kept reading, and I never took action. So when I said I'm a case study in a lot of things to do wrong, number one thing I did wrong was I didn't get started. I didn't start. I read and researched and talked, and that went on for like 4 or 5 years. I just thought about it, and I didn't do anything. I didn't take action. It wasn't until I found a local guy in my local market doing a boot camp, and I signed up for this boot camp. It wasn't cheap at the time. I think it was like $3,000 for a weekend, which was insane. But I had gotten to the point in my life where I was like, I've got to make this happen, and I need help doing it. So I signed up for it, my wife and I. And we went to it, and it was good. It gave us good basic information. It was certainly good at getting me motivated to move forward. And I joined a local mastermind and did my first deal just a few months later. So, spending that money, and the great thing is my wife is awesome. She's smarter than I am. She's, better looking than me and all that. She's also very conservative. And I knew I sort of did something that I knew I couldn't ever undo. We spent a lot of money to learn about something, and if we were going to spend that kind of money to learn about something, there was no way in the world she was going to let me not do it after spending the money. So I sort of had a must do kind of an edict from her. If we're going to spend this money, we're going to go for it. So we did, and we did our first property at the end of 2008, and luckily it was a success. It was actually a huge success at the time.
That's great. So you talked about going to a boot camp, and you talked about being in a mastermind group. Kind of talk about the role that those had in inspiring you, or kind of giving you whatever you had a void there somewhere. So talk about
there was
that.
a huge. Okay, and that's a good point. And I said I kind of said it was crazy to spend $3,000. Let me take a step back on that. It seemed like a lot of money at the time, and it is a lot of money. But honestly, that $3,000 is the best investment ever. It's not because the material necessarily had a worth of $3,000, but the motivation and the basics that I learned there enabled me to do my first deal where I made $15,000. So if you look at it from an investment standpoint, would you give me $3,000 if I would give you back $15,000? Of course, you do it all day long. So it was the best money I've ever spent, and that boot camp gave me the foundation. I was able to ask some of those basic questions that you're kind of embarrassed maybe to ask at a big mastermind or some local, real estate investing club. You feel silly asking some, questions that maybe are, in your mind, they're stupid questions. They're so basic. But I got all those questions answered at the boot camp. And like I said, the information was kind of broad and general and generic, but it was a good enough base for me to feel like I could move forward. And I'm not an engineer by degree, but my previous experience is sort of in an engineering project management kind of a field. So I really need to understand things before I move forward sometimes.
Right.
I've changed. I'm not so much that way now, but I was definitely that way then. So I needed some basic things answered. And that boot camp helped. And then transitioning to the mastermind, it was actually a paid mastermind. So everybody in there was relatively serious or very, very serious and doing a lot of deals and successful in their own right. So I was surrounding myself with who I wanted to be and what I wanted to know.
Yeah,
and I think that's the biggest thing about masterminds is you're surrounding yourself with people who have already done and are where you want to be, and just picking their brains once a month and then eventually doing deals with them, invaluable. Can't tell you how important that was, and without it, I don't think I could have gotten anywhere, really. I mean, I really relied on that.
Yeah, I think I'm in a very high level mastermind myself with some really big name guys, and it really, more than anything, it's not cheap. It's a lot of money, but to surround yourself with people that not only inspire you to kind of achieve more, to know that they're watching you, and the next time you have a meeting, they're going to ask for an update on how it's going. Like, it's just, it puts you in a position to not want to disappoint people or look bad or disappoint yourself. And so, like you said, a lot of times it's not necessarily the money; it's just the predicament you put yourself in. That I'm now more committed. You kind of notched up the commitment ladder to where there's less of an opportunity for you to turn back now. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, is they put themselves in a position where it's easy to make excuses and not move forward because, they're not in that much pain anyway.
Yeah, it's one of those, if a tree falls in the forest kind of a scenario. If you make a commitment and tell no one but yourself, and then you break it, who's to know, right? It kind of makes it too easy for you to not do some of these things. But you're right. A mastermind is great for accountability, if nothing else. I mean, it's just having people that you tell what your goals and what your plans are, who are going to then hold you accountable, or at the very least, innocently ask you how that's going. Your own sense of, pride, it's difficult to not do anything while you're telling these people you're going to do it and then not do it. It's embarrassing. So
yeah, I mentor a lot of folks, and I usually tell them, I use kind of a funny joke before I left the corporate world. Everybody had plans flying around. There's all these meetings to meet about stuff, and everybody knows there's a lot of potential things that the company's going to do. I work for a very large company, but anytime something got laminated, it's like that became the law of the land. The next thing you know, they're handing out thousands of them, and everybody's got them pinned to their cubes, and this is our plan for 2015. Whatever it is, they kind of laminated it. So I always tell people, like, I give people some planning tools that we have, and just develop your kind of pro forma plan. This is how many houses you're going to buy. Here's how much you're going to advertise. This is how much you need to advertise to get there, all these things. But then laminate it and share it with people that will hold you accountable, whether it's a spouse or family member or friend, whatever. But just, effectively laminate it and make it the law of the land and go get it done.
Absolutely. And my wife is the best at that. If I tell her something I plan on doing, she has like the greatest memory. She will bring it up to me. If I say in a week I'm going to do something, in about 6 or 7 days, she'll start asking me about it. So, she's the greatest, mirror in the world to hold up in front of myself when I don't do something. So, it's important. Whoever it is, whether it's a spouse or a mentor, or a mastermind, I mean, it's valuable. People, a lot of times think, I don't need that. I know what I want to do. But, man, you need to surround yourself with people who are doing things. And like you said, you're in a high-level mastermind. Surrounding yourself with people who are doing maybe even more than you, or have
Yeah.
at the next level where you want to be. Man, that's huge. If nothing else, just to see that it's possible. There are people doing it. You get that renewed sense of possibility when you're around people like that.
Yeah, and you always, whatever you think or how good you are at something, when you get around a lot of people that are really talented, you quickly realize that you don't know anywhere close to what you thought you knew.
Yeah, exactly. In your local market, you might be a rock star, but
right.
You go into something like that, and you're.
Yeah.
But it's great. That's you. I mean, ideally, you don't necessarily want to surround yourself with people who aspire to be you. It's fine, but you need to surround yourself with people who you aspire to be. You know, it's just that the average of 5 people you associate with, kind of a law.
Right. So before I think we talked about this a little bit before we started recording today. You were talking about your first deal and how your wife. You mentioned your wife is really conservative, and if you hadn't made money on that first deal, that might have been the end of your real estate investing.
That'd be the end of it.
career.
I would have just resigned myself to work until I was 200
Yeah,
years old.
yeah. So that's what a lot of people are afraid of, is that they're going to lose money. And I think you know enough now to know, had you lost money on the first deal and had you had the fortitude to keep sticking with it, that wouldn't even matter now. But a lot of people, if they do lose money on their first deal or even comes close, they give up. I mean, talk about kind of that phenomenon of it not being worried about failing, just worried about getting the lesson so that you can move forward quickly.
Yeah, it's real easy to tell people that, once you've been doing it for several years, if you don't do well on your first deal, if you lose money, or if you really don't do very well, it's a tough pill to swallow, and there's a huge leap of faith with real estate anyway, right? People are just scared. It's a lot of money you're talking about. I can look back as an experienced investor, and you can look back and go, oh, I mean, if you lose money in the first deal, don't worry about it. You're going to make money on most of your deals. It's going to be well worth it. That's great, unless you're talking to me in 2008 when I pushed, $15,000 of my own money into the pot to do the renovations and went and got a mortgage for the house. If I had lost all my money and not made any money at all, that was my life savings at the time. So it's easy to tell people that, but the idea that you're going to always make money in real estate is probably a little bit naive.
Sure.
Things are not always going to go well. I always just hope for people they do okay on their first deal, because it's a lot easier to tell them you will lose money at some point, or things will not go well on every single deal. It's a lot easier to tell them that after they've had some success. But I can tell you, in a way, if you learn more a lot of times when mistakes are made and things don't go well. That's
right.
where you learn a lot, right? You make distinctions and you learn what not to do. So if you don't do well on your first deal, I can say you probably learn more than if everything went smoothly. And the likelihood of you losing money again is probably a lot lower, right? You're going to make money on most of your deals. And I always tell people this too, when I'm trying to explain to them what I do. Sometimes I'll use the analogy of, those guys on the flipping shows, and they'll go in and buy a house and renovate it and bring contract, and then they'll sell it again at top market value. Oh yeah. Oh, that looks like a lot of fun, man. It looks great. And I go, real estate investing is not that exciting, honestly. Right. If you're doing it right, if it's that exciting, you're doing a lot wrong, right? I've never had to scream at a contractor. I've just never had a deal. I'm in the Michigan market, so we're buying houses in the $50,000 to $80,000 range and selling them at the $150,000 to $180,000 range. So we're not talking millions and millions, but if I ever estimate a rehab to be $40,000 and it ends up being $90,000, I'm losing money. That's a dead deal. And these shows where it's like, oh, it's going to be $30,000, it ends up being 120, but they still made 60. That doesn't exist in my world. I've got to be better than that. So my numbers don't vary wildly. My circumstances don't vary wildly, because the fact of the matter is, when you're flipping houses especially, you get a system, you get a rhythm, you get materials that you use, and every house, with very little exception, becomes very repetitive.
Sure, absolutely.
And very routine. If you're doing it right, it becomes very routine.
Yeah.
If you're constantly being surprised and constantly having things go completely out of control, you're not doing a very good job in the upfront when you're buying and estimating the rehab.
Yeah, I tell people that all the time. This is, if done right, this is a pretty boring business.
It's super boring.
Want to develop a process. It's checklists. It's talking to the same people over and over again. There's nothing sexy about it. And You know, I've bought and sold hundreds of houses, and I've never had a makeup artist at any of my projects. Have you, Mike?
No. I never have either.
So it doesn't work that way. Have you ever done donuts in the front yard of a house because you were mad at a contractor, or thrown a sledgehammer through a window? Or
No, I've never done that. I've had to fire contractors, and I've had contractors not perform, but I've never gotten in shouting matches and thrown things, and it just isn't that exciting. When my first house I did, and the first couple houses I did, just buying tile was super exciting, right? So that was exciting. But once you do a handful of deals, like I say, if something turns out to be super exciting, it's usually negative. It's not exciting in a good way usually. Yeah. You find something when you take a wall down that you didn't expect, but by and large, it's real repetitive and sort of like you said, it's just boring. It's not super sexy. Yeah. When you start to get processes and you use, I knew, because we've rehabbed hundreds of houses. We primarily have been rehabbers, a lot of people know. And, we use the same color paint. I'm not joking. If we've rehabbed 200 houses, we've used the same color paint on 195 of those. And there were like 5 where we tried to get overly creative and use custom colors, and we immediately regretted it every time. It was just like, now we got to touch that up. Which color was that? And next thing you know, we're repainting an entire wall instead of touching something up. It was just, let's go back to the boring stuff. Yeah, exactly. You should not be reinventing the process every time you flip a house. If you're going to do one a year, I suppose you could do that. But if you want to make this a business that's you can grow and you can scale, you have to use same material, not even similar, the same materials, and you have to create systems. And the more routine and systematic things become, probably the more successful you're becoming at the same time.
Yeah.
So,
and it's funny, like you said, a lot of people that get into this, it's not just a money thing, it's a lifestyle thing. And if you have to go pick out the supplies every time because you want to change them every time, you're probably not living the lifestyle that you got into the business for in the first place.
Yeah, we made the common mistakes that people make when they start is they think they're going to save money by doing some of the painting themselves, or they're going to do some of the work themselves. We did the same thing. We were painting a basement. I was painting fascia and scraping fascia on my first house, and I'm insanely, lazy when it comes to that stuff. So I immediately identified I didn't want to be doing that, and it was not really saving me money because it was taking me longer, and I was getting in the way of the other subcontractors. Right. So it was actually hurting me. But a lot of people make that mistake where they think they're going to save money by doing things themselves. And really what you find is the more successful people become in this industry, the less and less and less they're actually doing themselves on all phases, right? So you and I have, people that we know in common that are doing hundreds and hundreds of houses, and what are they doing in the process? Almost nothing. They have people who maybe answer the phones. They have people who talk to the contractors. They have people who turn on the utilities. They have people who are selling the houses for them. They're managing their business, but they're not like working in it so much. And that's at a high level. So even if you're doing only, 2 or 3 or 4 houses a year at this point, you're starting out, you really still want to sort of fire yourself from every position in your company until eventually you're running the company and managing people and not doing everything. So we did way too much in the beginning, way too much. Yeah,
even in the early days when you're getting started, if nothing else, your time is better spent generating leads or finding more deals.
Right, exactly.
You have to start to look at your opportunity cost of your time. And even stuff like, over the years, we've done stuff like I would pay an errand runner to go pick up a lockbox when we sold a house. And you're like, wait, I'm paying somebody $10 an hour to go pick up a $15 lockbox, and it's taking them 2 hours. So this is costing me money. Well, let's just then it evolved to we're going to give them a prepaid kind of UPS box to ship it back. That's $5. So even if we get 1 and 3 back, we're ahead of the game. And then it's like, it's just the cost of doing business. Just if they say, I've got your lockbox, what do I do with it? Say, throw it in the trash or hang it on your Christmas tree or something, but I don't want to deal with it. So it's just funny how that evolves over time. You're trying to, a lot of the people that are successful in this business start out by being you're very conservative. You're trying to find ways to make money. And I will say a lot of the people that do really well in this business have found ways to squeeze a few $1,000s out of every deal, but it's not from things that take their time. It's usually from, finding a process that can improve things or whatever.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Like you said, people tend to do too much in the beginning, and really, my problem was, and still is, I like to try to divorce myself from this character trait, but I can't. I'm a control freak. and I'm insanely impatient. So those two character traits make it difficult for me to hire and train because I like to make sure things are getting done right. I'm saying right in air quotes here, and I'm super impatient. So how do you train someone to do it exactly how you would do it and as quickly and with the same urgency you would have? It's difficult. So what I have to realize is things don't have to be done my way. They need to get done, and they need to be done right, but they don't necessarily be done the way I do it.
Yeah.
I have to be able to be patient while people learn so that ultimately everything can grow and be faster in the end. But it was a lesson that took me longer than it should have. I was a one-man show, my wife and I should say, a two-person show for a long time. And it wasn't until I was trying to scale and realize I couldn't do it and wear all the hats that I had to start hiring and kind of building my team. And that's been a game changer for me. It's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Mike, we've got about another 5 minutes or so. Maybe we can talk about just really kind of action items, because I know we've spent a lot of time talking about our own experiences here, and you're sharing yours on how you got started. Maybe we could go through some action items for people that are listening that are either looking to get started literally, or they've had a little bit of success early on and done a few deals, but they need to, in order for this to make sense for them, they need to take it to another level.
Yeah. Okay. And that's a great topic, and it's something I'm passionate about. It's why I do my podcast. People who have flipped, 10 houses, they can figure out how to get to the next level. There's a lot of resources and people they can talk to. The new people sometimes struggle, and that's who I really want to help, because I remember being new and I remember being afraid. And that's the two things that will stop you from doing this. So number one, the thing that you have to do, and I've done a lot of podcast episodes about this, I can't stress it enough. It's a drum I beat all the time. You have to take action, right? You've read it. I don't care who you are right now listening. I'm just telling you, put the books away. You've read enough. Okay. Keep listening to this podcast, to the Flip Nerd podcast, because it's excellent. But listen to it on your way to take action. You know what I mean? Like, don't make it in place of taking action. You're done learning. You're done trying to figure this out. You know enough to actually take that first step. And for most people, I would suggest the first step, and this is maybe not, I don't know if you agree with this, Mike, but I think people need to find a mentor. Now, it doesn't have to necessarily be a paid mentor. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a national mentor. It could be someone local in your area. Go to masterminds, number one, start networking. Find out who's actually doing deals in your local area, and try to have coffee with them, have lunch with them, sit down and ask them for a little bit of their time. But in exchange, ask them if there's anything you can do for them. Okay, get that relationship started with people who are actually doing what you want to be doing. Ask them how you can help them, if there's any way you can get involved, and don't look for anything in return. Just try to be helpful and try to offer them anything you have, whether it's time, something that you can do for them that would make their life easier, and just be around it. Learn from them. And you know what? For that matter, paid mentors are not a bad thing. I don't have any issue with that. I've mentored people, I've coached people, and I think that's great. But no matter which route you go, a paid mentor or someone local that you just want to make a connection with, what they tell you, you have to do. You have to try it.
Right.
You have to take action. And I really suggest, if you find someone, you don't look for 3 mentors who all do it different ways, because you'll spin in circles. Find somebody who's doing it, make sure that they're doing it and they're legitimate, and then use what they're doing as a roadmap and take action. That to me, that's the number one thing. Don't let yourself be distracted by all the different ways of doing it, because there's a million different ways to do this industry or do this business. Find someone who's doing it and do it exactly how they're doing it, and don't deviate. You're like a Clydesdale. Put those blinders on the sides so you can't see side to side, and just have tunnel vision and go after it until you do your first deal successfully.
Yeah, and a lot of good mentors too, I think, will, even if they have a kind of a big toolbox, if you will, in terms of the number of ways that they make money in real estate, they'll usually tell you to keep it simple. Start simple. Let's not get exotic here. And I think that is part of the challenge. Is there's actually a huge educational industry in this industry that might be bigger than the real estate industry.
Oh my God, I know. There's more
right?
people teaching it than there are houses in the world, I think. But and that's a problem I've had with people that I've mentored or coached in the past. Is I'll give them, some action steps, and we'll discuss their plan of action, and then they'll come back to me in a few days and go, "I listened to this podcast, and there's this guy, and he's doing this, and it sounds awesome. What do you think?" And I'll go, "Forget it. It might work, but forget it. You have a path. I've given you a path. We're working on something here. Stick with it. Wait until you've done this." And eventually, you're going to branch out. You've done it. I've done it. Most people have done it. But in the beginning, it's critical. I mean, it's critical to success that you keep it simple and stay on the course.
Yeah, and even on top of that, even if you get exotic down the line, you need to understand the fundamentals. Wholesaling is the basic fundamental of real estate, and if you don't understand that, then you can't be a successful rehabber. You can't be a successful anything.
Right.
Just focus on the fundamentals early on. So, Mike, well, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun, and you're doing some good stuff here. I've listened to a lot of episodes. You've done 200 and how many? 200 and...
I should know that, my friend. But,
I put you on the spot.
You did. You did. If you
200 and something,
you are going to be. I think you're episode 202.
Okay,
only give me like a 90% quote on that. You're 202.
Okay, 202. I mean, there's just. I always tell people, listen, you don't have to listen to my podcast, but I guarantee if you listen to this podcast, Flip Nerd, and you start at the beginning and start listening to these, you'll get an entire education on real estate investing just from this one podcast. There's more than enough information out there, but the bottom line is you have to know the first step, right? But before you take that first step, you don't have to know step 10. So get to that first step and then worry about step 2 when you need to get to step 2. That's the basics. Just get out there and get started. Don't let fear control your life.
Absolutely. So, Mike, tell folks how to get a hold of you and how to find your podcast.
You can find my podcast at juststartrealestate.com. Go there and check it out. You can go to iTunes at Just Start Real Estate and take a listen. There's a lot of stuff there for you too. I'd love to have you there. Sign up, subscribe, and all that. But listen, you can get a hold of me at Mike at juststartrealestate.com if you want to talk to me directly, or I have a contact tab on my website. Either way, I return all emails. I try to do it immediately, but if I don't do it immediately, I'll get to it that day for sure. And I'd love to talk to you and help you out. If you have any questions, I'm very accessible. Please shoot me an email and we can talk.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Mike. We're going to add links for everything down below for those that are listening in. Just check out our website and you can get access to Mike. Mike, thanks so much for joining us today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Please stay in touch.
All right, I will. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Are you a member of FlipNerd.com, the most robust real estate investing platform in existence, where you can find off-market wholesale deals and great vendors literally in your market? You can get access to advice from experts and learn about local clubs and events right in your backyard. If not, please visit FlipNerd.com and register for a free account. You can register in less than a minute. It's pretty much the coolest site that's ever existed in the real estate investing industry, so get on over to FlipNerd.com.